instruction on how to use this machine, which I have had as well. I'm sure I won't do it properly, but you'll have to bear with me. So I think we're ready to get started. Okay, I'll now call this, the colors are confusing, but anyway, I'll go. I will now call this meeting of the Hamilton Future Fund Board of Governors to order. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and/or visually recording at this meeting. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during the committee meetings. We have no ceremonial activities, so the first item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda. However, please note that I have received added presentations from the Ancaster Tennis Club, the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group, and the Hamilton Malayale Samajam, which are before you.
Okay, thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented? So moved, seconded. We will require an electronic vote. This is the first test of what we're doing here today, so we will require an electronic vote, and I guess that means we're going to turn something on. Everybody has to vote if they're in the room. I didn't vote? I did. I pushed.
Through you,
To
Mr.
hold it? Okay. Has everybody done it? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Now, just to remind everybody, we did have some declarations the last time, but the 5 items that we're going to be talking about today are the 91st Highlanders Athletic Association, the Ancaster Tennis Club, the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group, Hamilton Malayale Samajam, and North Hamilton Community Health Center. So those are the ones we would need a conflict for if there is one. Okay. I don't see any. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the last meeting on May the 28th as presented? We will require an electronic vote. Technical difficulties. Motion is carried. Any communications other than the additional presentations we're going to see today? No? Delegation requests, we don't have any other than the one we had the last time, and the gentleman, Mr. Chandrashkar, was not able to attend this meeting, so we'll have him at a subsequent meeting. Consent items, none. Public hearings, none. So I guess we're now ready for the presentations, unless somebody has anything else. We'll talk about numbers and everything after the presentations. So the first presentation group, I'd like to call on Kevin Gonchi and Mr. Gord Bignot to come up and present on the grant application for the 91st Highlanders Athletic Association. You have 10 minutes to present, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin Gonsi. I'm the chairman of the Golden Horseshoe Track and Field Council, representing the 91st Highlanders Athletic Association. Our organization represents over a dozen community-based track and field program groups that have come around the redevelopment of the former Mohawk Sports Park track and field facility. With me today, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dan Clark, current president of the 91st Highlanders Athletic Association, as well as longtime member, Mr. Tom Roden, member of the board of directors. Thank you, gentlemen, for attending today. Just over 5 years ago, nearly a dozen community stakeholder and user groups entered into the collaborative partnership arrangement with the City of Hamilton towards the renewal of the Ray Lewis Track and Field Center, formerly the Mohawk Sports Park Track. This is truly a unique public venue, the only one of its kind in the city, used exclusively for track and field competitions and training, and is gaining a recognition as being the best outdoor facility of its kind within our region. Our various community partners, which include local school boards, feel strongly that we must dedicate the time and effort into maintaining this public space for the benefit of Hamilton residents of all abilities and interests. In fact, one of our previous initiatives was to rename this facility after Ray Lewis. We felt strongly that having a quality facility meant that we should have a quality name attached to it. In addition to his athletic achievements, Ray Lewis has a cultural significance to the Hamilton community, and we're very proud to have that renaming completed. We've met with community leaders at all levels of government, including senior city staff, and established a long-term priority outcome list, which leads us to why we're here today. To date, our group has directly and indirectly contributed over $1 million towards the renewal of this public space, including a recent acquisition of $150,000 this past year towards new community program equipment, and forecasted additional purchases of over $30,000 in new equipment by the end of this year. As a result of this investment, we have seen a number of program and user groups hours almost double at this facility. 2 new community program initiatives have launched this past year, including a new community para-athletics program, and we are currently in the process of drafting bid applications towards hosting provincial and national level championship events and competitions. Just some background, the Mohawk Sports Park complex is home to several public sports venues, including baseball stadium, a soccer field, a football stadium, rugby pitches, and of course the Ray Lewis Track and Field Center, which is the only venue at this sports park, the largest sports park in Hamilton, that lacks any suitable spectator seating. We've learned from senior management and city staff that the master plan for this facility will not be up for review for at least 10 years, and it's highly doubtful that a city priority will include the installation of bleachers. Our initial efforts attempted to identify any potential surplus equipment with the city's inventory, meaning if there was any bleachers not being used or sitting dormant elsewhere within the city inventory, we would have them reallocated to the track. However, those efforts met with negative results. As well, we estimated that renting bleachers, last year we hosted the 2018 Minor Track Association Championships. The organizers of that event costed out about $3,600 rental fee for the weekend for one section of bleachers, which would have depleted their entire event budget, so it just wasn't financially feasible for this one event to rent bleachers. We have existing protocols in place with the City of Hamilton, having completed similar projects in the past. The city is responsible, basically the arrangement we have is the city's responsible for any of the fixed assets, and then the community user groups have been responsible for maintaining and acquiring any of the program equipment that's used by the user groups and school boards. The way the process has worked in the past and the way we've arranged it now is whenever we've applied for grants and funding towards initiatives for this particular location, the money's turned over to our city project manager. It's put into a project account, and then it's dispersed through city accounts based on the work being performed. Our project objectives and work plan have been approved by city officials and we've established channels of communications, and we meet periodically with city staff for planning meetings. Phase 1 and 2 have been completed, covered 2017 to 2018. We're now in the Phase 3 portion of our long-term plan for this facility. And we are working to achieve our Phase 3 objectives, hopefully to either start it or complete it by this year or early 2020. The installation, our proposed scope of work or our work plan includes the installation of 2 sections of bleachers with a 500-person capacity and an outdoor gazebo structure. Again, the scope of work was based on identified priority needs of various community partners. The spectators in particular were identified as a result of us hosting prior events, but as well as consulting with bid documents for the provincial and national level championship events, which require a minimum of at least a 500 capacity seating area to host these events. Last year, as I mentioned, we hosted the Minor Track and Field Associations, which is the first major event in years that has been hosted here. There was over 1,200 people who attended from out of town. I had the opportunity to attend both days. The reoccurring comments were everyone was very favorable about the improvements at the track, but the question was, why isn't there any place to sit? On day one, the lawn chairs and the blankets came out. It was quite a nice day. You could sit on the grass. On day two, unfortunately, it rained consistently, and most of the grass area turned to mud, and it was quite a mess and very unsightly. The gazebo structure was identified as a result of an identified need. I'm up there probably 3 days a week during the summertime with the Canusa Track and Field program that I volunteer with. I can tell you firsthand there's generally a lack of overhead cover in this area. Therefore, we've identified a need for some kind of overhead protective cover, not only from the sun, but unexpected weather conditions. Just 2 weeks ago, on a Thursday night, we had over 80 kids participating in various program groups. We had to evacuate to the field house, which has 2 change rooms. We had to cram into that field house because there was no other suitable overhead cover for that area. So there is an identified need for a gazebo structure. As well, we've consulted with the Rick Hansen Foundation on accessibility features for inclusive outdoor public space, and they've identified the need for overhead gazebo structures, which would be beneficial for people with mobility limitations. I'd also like to address the comments or the assessment that there seems to be top-heavy with accessibility features, and really that's not the case here. What we've done is we've gone to great lengths to identify modern and up-to-date improvements to this facility, which have to be compliant with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which was in 2005. When the funding was approved for the Tim Hortons Field project, whether you agree or not, there are portions of that funding that had to go towards accessibility improvements. The accessibility or the spectator seating seats that we're proposing, for instance, include accessibility features which are required in any new developments that for any installations in public space. There's hand railings, wheelchair ramp, and a viewing platform. The gazebo structure in itself is no different really from any other gazebo structure that's installed anywhere around the city each year. The only difference being is that we're going to install picnic tables without seats so that people in wheelchairs can pull up to the tables and sit next to everybody else. So this work, and we're very proud to be inclusive of our various diverse communities, and will include compliant disability standards with current legislation. Our established funding models was based on a tri-party contribution from municipal, provincial, and federal funding sources, and minor contingency costs being covered through private funding sources and donations. Unfortunately, and I take responsibility for this, we were unsuccessful at our first attempts with the Ontario Trillium Foundation Capital Grant and the Government of Canada Enabling Accessibility Grant. We've since identified where we went wrong on those applications, and we're in a position now where we can resubmit. We've already resubmitted the capital grant for Trillium Foundation for the next round, and oddly enough, when we submitted the application, I talked to the program intake coordinator for the federal government. They had indicated that in looking at the work we're proposing, it wasn't enough of an accessibility project to be eligible for the funding that we were requesting. So what they've suggested is that we tweak and resubmit the application for the federal funding to include costs, coverages for the features such as the ramp and the viewing platform.
Just letting you know that we're at 10 minutes now. We're not going to cut you off, but...
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I apologize for going over. So the scope of work being completed will be contingent on our ability to secure the necessary funding, which includes contribution from the Hamilton Future Fund. For instance, the Future Fund portion represents 1/3 of the overall anticipated project for all of the areas that we hope to achieve. If any one or two funding sources fall through, then we'll just basically complete the work that we've secured the funding for. What I do like is to the chair, if you could just clarify, it's my understanding the Future Fund covers a 2-year period in which the funds can be used, I think, based on my knowledge.
I don't think we have any specific rules, but certainly we're hoping for 1 year.
Okay.
Years is okay, but wait, I'll let you finish.
My point is, I think that's an excellent feature for the fund, and what I mean by that is because I'm big on not putting all of our eggs in one basket and not burdening one funding source with covering the costs of any one project. I like trying to draw in as much funding, including private and public sector contributions, to diversify the funding input. My point is, with a 2-year period for the foundation, that allows us an opportunity to apply, and if not successful, to reapply to these other grants that we're currently working on reapplying again. So I'm quite confident that we'll be able to achieve the full objectives for this property and for the benefit of the community. And just to clarify as well, we've got this work plan, the Phase 3 work plan, went before the Capital Planning Committee and was approved at council. I've since then been introduced, and I'm working in liaison with a city project manager. We have an agreement. The way it will unfold is that as money comes in, we will plan the work that can be achieved based on the identified budget. The funds are turned over to city staff, put into the applicable project account, and then the work is posted and awarded based on the city's tendering processes and protocols. That's all I had. If anyone had any questions, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation. I think we've got somebody from the city here as well. Andrea McDonald, she here? Yes. So, questions, Judy?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for coming in and presenting. My question is around the legacy aspect. The Hamilton Future Fund, one of the core foundational mandates, of course, is to provide funding for legacy projects that would be that are a legacy for all of the residents of the city of Hamilton and for the city itself. So could you speak to that aspect, please, through you, Chair?
Thank you. In looking at any funding, potential funding applications, I look at the project and whether or not the prescribed guidelines would fit this project. I feel strongly, and there was some debate at the last board meeting, which I attended, as to what exactly defined a legacy project. To me, as a citizen, and based on the over a dozen community groups that are involved in this project, we feel strongly that the renaming of this facility after Ray Lewis, this being exclusively Hamilton's largest public outdoor sports park. It's unique, it's one of a kind. No other track and field complex in the city can host a track and field meet. This is the only one. That includes McMaster University. McMaster University cannot host a championship event. They don't have the full amenities that this park does. Installing amenities such as spectator seating just solidifies this as its importance as a major sports venue. We've got Tim Hortons Field, we've got Bernie Arbor baseball stadium, and I think, looking at my definition of what a legacy is, this work it falls right within those parameters as it being a legacy piece and identifying the value of this asset to our community. So.
Thank you for that explanation. And Chair, my final question is around how would the Future Fund be recognized within the new pieces that you're wanting to build?
So, having dealt with various grant requirements in the past, we have established protocols. We have over a dozen community groups that are involved in either social media or websites. We're proposing that part of our recognition would be to post the Hamilton Future Fund logo on all social media. As well, we're currently working with city staff regarding signage in regards to recognizing the various contributors. So the Hamilton Future Fund logo would be included on any signage to the facility alongside provincial logo, as well as the Hamilton Athletic Trust, which contributed in the past, and the Government of Canada, as well as email correspondence. We can include the logo, and any public speaking events such as this, either publicly or before council, will acknowledge any contributions from the city through the Future Fund.
Thank you. I appreciate your answers and appreciate you coming in. And for anyone else around the Horseshoe, and you may already know this, you just push the request button and ask your questions, okay? Thank you.
Anyway, thank you. Just a couple of questions about sort of the funding that you're going to be applying for and when you do those applications and what the time frame is for those things.
Okay, so the Ontario Trillium the second attempt at the Ontario Trillium Foundation capital grant just went in, so we anticipate that we'll learn the results of that grant in December. So in time for spring work to be done, hopefully before the season starts. As well, I think the federal government grant reopens up back in November, and then in the spring, we'll know if that funding's approved in early spring. So I personally, I'll be sitting down with city staff as well as the project manager to identify ways we can start the work as money's coming in. Or as part of a collaborative partnership, we'll sit down and agree if it's best to wait, because we do have that two-year window, hypothetically, to wait and collect all monies ahead of time, and then at the end of the this year, identify what we can go ahead with. So,
Okay, thank you for that. So the request had two amounts in it. One was for $150,000, the other one was for $100,000. Maybe you could explain that to us?
well, we would really appreciate the $150,000.
What would you do with 100 if you only get 150 is the question.
Right. So our project was broken down into three parts. So the two sections of bleachers and the gazebo structure. So based on my recollection of the project budget and other funding opportunities we have, we'll be at least be able, with the contingency amount, we'll be able to install at least one section of bleachers. And at the end of the day, if that's all we achieve out of the three parts, then it's still a successful project and beneficial to the community. Perhaps we can revisit the other portions of it. So,
Thank you. Narinder?
Through the chair, thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question to staff. As this is a city property and it is part of the recreation master plan, so if there's any updates from staff in terms of council approval for capital works and what's allocated there currently.
Maybe Andrea, you can answer that? Or someone?
Through the chair, thank you. I'm here with my colleague Steve Sabor, who is with Recreation, and I think he's best to speak to the Recreation Master Plan.
Thank you. Through the chair, we did have a outdoor study in which we commissioned and presented to council in 2011. Within that report were several recommendations nearing up to 200, but specific to track and field and the amenities associated with track and field. We do have in our short-term and long-term plans to take a look at shading and bathroom study, which would be similarly reflected in this request. The shading and the bathroom study is scheduled to be in our work plan within 2024. When we did take a look at the assets in terms of the actual track, we were able to, through capital budgets, have that renovation of the track and field facility. Once we did have the opportunity to have consultations with the groups, the following the phases in which Kevin mentioned were discussed, and as he mentioned, were presented through the capital budget process. In terms of the amenities associated with the track and field facilities, it was not in the scope of our outdoor study. Essentially, the actual playing facilities, but it is very It's very useful in terms of the activities that happen within the track and field community. That spectator seating is very much needed within a competition venue. So that's what I can say in terms of the outdoor study and the impacts to this request.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other requests for information? Yeah. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Mover, Terry, Arlene, all in favor? Sorry. Do we vote? We don't vote.
So through you, Mr. Chair, because we're just receiving the presentation, we don't require an electronic vote.
Great. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
So the second information request is from the Ancaster Tennis Club. I'll call on Mr. Matthew Kovitz. Yes. Come forward and make your presentation. As before, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to address you and the board. My name is Matt Kouvers, and I'm the president of the Ancaster Tennis Club, and we are here to ask you for help in establishing a winter tennis facility in Village Green Park on the existing 5 tennis courts. The Ancaster Club has been in operation since the early 1930s, and it was incorporated 7 years ago as a not-for-profit community entity. We had a membership last year of 580, of which 32% are juniors. A large portion, namely 24.6% of the membership, do not reside in Ancaster. These members live in Waterdown, Dundas, Mount Hope, Flamborough, and the West Mountain, and a few outside the greater Hamilton area, Woodstock and Kitchener. I will not only be speaking on behalf of our members, but also for tennis players who are members of other local tennis clubs living across the whole western portion of the city, including Flamborough, Dundas, Waterdown, Greenfield, and not just Ancaster. Our goal is to have an air-supported structure, or dome, installed during the winter over the 5 existing tennis courts in Village Green Park behind the Ancaster Library. We started to work on this in 2016, completing our first business plan, detailed cost estimates, and our first meeting with Councillor Lloyd Ferguson. The basics that are involved in installing a dome are upgraded utility services, a large concrete foundation, grade beam, an inflation and heating system, as well as the inflated membrane that formed the structure itself. The overall objective of the club is to provide all community members the opportunity to participate in recreational and competitive tennis and to promote fellowship, exercise, friendship, and fair play. The club will offer programs of instruction and development for players of all levels and ages, including the underprivileged, for example, the Hamilton City Kids, and those with physical disabilities. The tennis dome will make available 13,800 court hours every winter, the equivalent of over 30,000 person hours of physical activity. We are confident that once up and running, the winter facility will be self-funding. We are mainly looking for some help to get started and to keep our loans to a minimum. As tennis grows in Canada, the use of domes over municipal-owned lands make all the economic sense, as the need for exercise and develop our junior players. And we must provide the most economical means possible to fill the need locally. There are 6 indoor courts in the greater Hamilton area, 2 of which are the former LADA Tennis School in Ancaster, private, and 4 at the Rosedale Tennis Club in Gage Park. As I'm sure you know, the Rosedale Club operates in a very similar way to Ancaster. The LADA Tennis School was last year purchased by Burlington Fitness and Rackets. So the greater Hamilton area, with a population of 550,000, has 6 indoor tennis courts. In contrast to those numbers, our neighbor, the city of Burlington, with a population of 195,000, has, we believe, at least 18 indoor courts. So this is the right time to install a dome in Ancaster. The city's outdoor recreation facilities and sport field provision plan states the city should work with the Ancaster Tennis Club in order to identify funding, operational, and other arrangements specific to their proposals for investments on municipal lands, in this case, Village Green Park. City staff retained a local architect to submit a feasibility report, and this report also indicates that the city lacks indoor tennis facilities. Excuse me. Over the last 3 years, we have seen a significant increase in our family membership with a corresponding increase in our junior category, confirming our belief that we ought to provide a winter facility as soon as possible. Based on our in-club survey and response to our loan program, we're confident that a winter facility at the Ancaster Club would have great starting base of at least 300 playing members, which is enough to make the club financially self-sustaining. Right from the start, the new dome will be a major draw to all tennis players in this area. It's estimated that we will grow over the first 3 years to 500 winter members, which would essentially fill the club. Growth will come quickly from new tennis players and existing players from other local summer clubs. And a detailed business plan for the Dome project was prepared by 2 of our members, a retired business professor and a chartered accountant. It was decided that our approach will likely to be a 10-year lease to purchase agreement for the removable portion of the Dome for 10 years. As you probably saw in our application, this will be more costly than outright purchase by over $300,000 because of the high interest rates on the leasing. Our work has estimated that our total upfront startup project cost, including a 15% contingency, is $587,000. This amount also includes consulting fees and the payment for non-recoverable lease items. Last fall, we applied for an Ontario Trillium Foundation grant in the amount of $150,000, which is the maximum grant one can apply for. The decision was delayed due to provincial budget discussion, and when we received the decision in the spring of this year, the grant office commented that our application lacked some statistical information. Our application was declined, and the grant office indicated that their budget had been reduced by $15 million. We have applied, and the application was sent before the deadline of June the 12th. We initiated a fundraiser temporary loan program whereby a member or non-member can loan the club $2,000. As an incentive, they will receive several free summer memberships, and we received $100,000 in post-dated checks. As indicated in our detailed submission to the Board of Governors, we are asking from the Hamilton Future Fund a grant in the amount of $205,911. I have shown here a few slides, and the funding requirement, can you go back, Alicia, to the previous one? The total project cost comparison on the left is the purchase of the dome outright, and on the right is the leasing dome for 10 years. The big cost for leasing is the 11% interest this company will charge. This is the only company who will lease a dome, and you have to pay 25% of the total cost in advance. The next slide does indicate the funding requirements for the dome purchase, the shortfall of 355, and we're hopeful to get a Trillium grant of 150 and a future fund of the 205, and that's where the 205 number comes from. On the right, for the leasing, 10-year leasing, yes, we have a much larger shortfall, and the revenue over the 10 years for membership court fees will have to take care of the particular shortfall. So basically, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm ready for questions.
Appreciate the information. So just looking at your sheet there, so you don't have the Trillium grant?
Pardon?
You do not have the Trillium grant?
No, we don't.
Right.
And the Trillium, by the way, there were 32 applications from Hamilton the last time around, and there were only 8 awarded by the province.
Right, and there's a number up there, it's a city loan of $290,000, what's that?
290, we received from the city a loan. It was a motion introduced by Councillor Lloyd Ferguson to get us started. That is a loan, so it has to be.
But that loan has not yet been advanced.
Yes, but we haven't received the money yet because we're in negotiations with the city on the agreement, the loan agreement.
I guess is somebody from the city can help us with that?
Yes, through the chair. We have received direction to proceed with a license agreement for that $290,000. That incorporates the operation of the facility as well. We are just currently finishing off the draft of that agreement along with legal services.
So the city's going to loan money to the project after it's done?
Sorry, through the chair, our agreement stipulates upon operation of the tennis facility, we have an operational agreement with the Ancaster Tennis Club.
Which is conditional on the dome being put up, or it's,
That's correct.
so Fred Eisenberger.
Thank you and welcome, and thanks for your presentation. So the community benefits that come out of the tennis facility in Ancaster, if I were to project out, you know, kids playing, you know, obviously it's, you know, adult membership as well. So can you kind of break down kind of how their kind of broader community benefits actually occur through the play of tennis, not only in currently, but as you have that dome in place going forward?
Thank you. Good question. One of the issues is situation is that we will go to the high schools. We, as of this summer and previous summer, we've had high schools. We come to our tennis courts for tournaments and so, and they get our courts for free. During the winter time, we understand from some of the discussions we've had with high schools that there will be more interest in playing tennis during the winter time. So they will then organize some tournaments and maybe lessons for inside, because the summertime the children are not in high school. We last year invited city kids to come down. They had a management problem that was canceled, but they're coming August the 19th. I've invited 25 children between 8 and 12. We will give them tennis rackets and instructions, and we'll make it a fun day for those children, finishing up with some pizzas and drinks. But that's what we like to do. Our goal for the Ancaster Tennis Club is get the juniors to play, get them away from their cell phones and iPads, and come down and play. And it starts to work. Certainly the parents have to be behind that, but that's our goal.
Okay, and that would project throughout the year. So if you have the bubble up, it'll be beyond, I imagine, October through the rest of the winter. You would have the same kind of accessibility in terms of high school and inner city kids.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yes.
What's the useful life of a bubble? How long does a bubble last? You know?
10 years. I think Rosedale had to replace theirs after 10 years. Now there are better fabrics on the market and coating, but 10 years is a minimum, definitely.
Right.
Rosedale replaced theirs already. But Rosedale is up all year around. It doesn't come down.
Right. So in your business plan, do you foresee then raising sufficient money over those 10 years?
That's correct,
to
yes.
replace the dome?
Yeah.
Is that all through membership fees?
Membership fees and the court fees,
fees,
which is a very important revenue source, the court fees.
Right. And you charge court fees now?
No, we do not. But when we have an indoor tennis, because you also have to pay for your utilities, which is going to be around $45,000 a winter for
Right.
gas and electricity.
Thank you.
The city won't pay that.
Right. So you're a city-owned facility, right?
That's correct.
The $290,000 is a loan to get you started on creating a funding model to actually create the dome. So it's not for current operations, it's for the dome
For
specific.
the construction itself.
Right, okay.
For example, Electra to bring in three-phase, and the Electra will only bring in one line to any park. It's around $25,000 because it needs a new transformer. It's very costly, and a delay of 6 months.
Electra being the hydro utility, yes, bringing hydro in, yeah. Thank you.
Terry? Terry Whitehead, you're on my list.
Tara's first.
Sorry. New equipment for me. Tara first. Sorry, Tara.
No problem. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your presentation today. We're talking about this Trillium grant, and you hope you're going to get it, but let's look at the tea leaves, and you might not get that money. How are you going to make up that funding gap?
We have to review our business plan. It all depends on the two grants and the amount of money we have. Since 2016, when we did our first estimate on total costs have gone up quite drastically, and we will have to review that. But we're waiting for the funding, and then our professional people in the club, they can review the business plan, which is quite a detailed plan. And the gentleman who did the spearheaded the plan, he passed away a few months ago of cancers. But we have lawyers and accountants and engineers on staff, in the club. But that is part of the problem. We can only have a loan so high, and we have to look at that, because you cannot charge too much money for membership and for court fees, and then still have free time for the social activities we want to do.
Okay, Terry?
Thank you, Chair. We'll have to get some clarification from staff or the chair. When we created the Future Fund, I thought it was absolutely clear that it was other than legacy, it was the last resort for organizations, and if they're already being funded in any way by the city, that was the vehicle they need to continue pursuing. So now I'm hearing that we're already providing a loan, and now we're going to the Future Fund for future capital. And I don't know if that's consistent with the policy, so I'm going to ask for that clarification at the right time, not now, but I just want to put that on the table. Transit, because most of the investments, especially in those kinds of investments, we ensure that we have access to all the community. What is the closest location that the public transit system provides for that location?
It's right at the Ancaster Library on Wilson Street.
And how far is that from this location?
100 meters, most.
Perfect. Those are my questions. Thank you.
So just Terry, responding to the other point that you made, in terms of how we allocate funds based on original thoughts and ongoing thoughts, I mean, certainly there is an issue that if there's money already coming from other places in the city, it's something we should take into consideration seriously.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you, Mr. Kovitz, for your presentation. My question relates to accessibility, similar to Terry's question, is around the marginalized communities, children who are not having access to facilities of this nature. And you did acknowledge that you will bring them in from time to time to, do some training and also provide them with some refreshments. I'm more interested in seeing what is a systemic approach to ensuring it's a consistent basis that these young people from outlying communities such as Hamilton are able to access the resources that we are funding as a city. So I'd like to see a bit more robust planning as to what the accessibility will look like for impoverished Hamiltonians, such as you described as some of the young people from City Kids. Not simply, well, they came one day, they had pizza, they had some lessons, and we check our metrics. So I'm more keenly interested in what kind of, I guess, a more robust plan to say they'll be integrated somewhat into the offerings at this facility.
Yes, first, our purpose is to bring them in and to show what we can do for them. There is no cost attached. And as the project manager, my discussions on the telephone have been that after August, and if we do get a bubble, see what we can do for them during the winter time. Because in the winter time, it's a little bit more difficult for them to organize events for them. So it's something we are going to develop. I've had preliminary discussions, but the trick is to bring them in, because some of these children, they will really enjoy tennis, particularly when they get some tennis instructions. And physical, for people in wheelchairs, etc., yeah, we have access, and the dome will have definitely access for the wheelchairs, how to get in, because there is an air pressure difference, and you have to have a special door system for people with wheelchairs to get in.
Chair, just a supplementary. So is it possible for us to get some kind of addendum in terms of a plan that would show how we would outreach to communities of children who are marginalized,
Well, I think
attached to this particular proposal?
we'll talk about that when we review the actual, okay?
Thank
Great, so appreciate that thought. John?
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your presentation. Just have one quick question concerning the financing. Under the leasing dome, it says court fees and increased membership, $341,000. Is that over a 10-year period?
That's correct.
And would that not apply whether you purchased the dome?
It would, but that would be a higher cost if you lease the dome. So we would have higher court fees and memberships. And you have to come up at a balance. You know, if you charge court fees of $24 an hour, and you have to go to $50, I don't think you will have to have too many members. But for that amount, yes, we were looking at, you have to make adjustments to the court fees and the memberships. And at this time, I don't know exactly the right amounts.
No, but I mean, to follow up on that, the court fees and increased memberships are a number. You're saying that's a high number, unlikely to be achieved maybe, but there's nothing on the other side.
No, they're not.
So if you could get half of that on the other side, you need that much less.
There will be increase, but don't forget, we're a not-for-profit club.
We're just looking at your numbers.
Yes.
On the right side, you have, if it cost you that much, you'd have to raise $340,000.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you that much less. On the left side, you don't have anything.
No, that's correct. That's the preferred option, the one on the
No,
left.
that's the only option, I think, but it's just, that option doesn't have anything in it for fees and increased membership, which assuming that they're identical facility improvements, you could do that, some amount of that on both.
Right.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Anthony?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your presentation. And through the chair, You spoke about persons with disabilities having equal access and equal opportunities to the facilities there. Now, is there also opportunities for teaching the subtle nuances for tennis pertaining to wheelchair users versus the able-bodied community?
Okay, for me to understand your question, you're asking for people with physical disabilities to opportunity for somebody to teach tennis?
Correct.
That's correct, yes. Last summer, we did not have any members in wheelchairs. The year before, yes, we did. And our present professional, the teacher, will teach people in wheelchairs. And it's amazing how fast these members move in their wheelchairs. And that opportunity is there, and we hope and we will have to encourage to get these members back this year.
Thank you. And just to follow up too, in terms of the subtle differences between able-bodied tennis versus wheelchair tennis, like it's the one bounce versus two bounce, and that will also be incorporated in the teaching.
Yeah, the members in wheelchairs, they're allowed two bounces instead of one.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terry. I'll push it again. Here we go.
Arising from a question that was asked earlier, you would be very supportive. I know that Councillor Farr initiated for the underprivileged Skate the Dream program at Eastwood. I started the FOR program, which is again dealing with the underprivileged, where our professional teaches them, and they, got sponsors, new golf clubs, and get to play. So we're giving a vehicle and opportunities for people that otherwise don't have access to sport, to give them access. You would be open to those kinds of initiatives at your club?
Yes, that's part of our plan.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Mayor Terry, thank you. The next item is the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group. I'd like to call on Sandy Thompson and Sharon Clark to come up and present on behalf of that organization. And you have 10 minutes to present. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Governors, Your Worship, Mayor Fred. Special comment to you, Fred, because it was because of you that I became involved in this organization. About 10 or 12 years ago, I was at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum, and the mayor came up to me and said, you might want to think about helping out this Beach Canal Lighthouse Group. I said, well, I got a connection to that because my great-great-grandfather was the first lighthouse keeper there. And he had the same name, George Thompson. George is my formal name, and Sandy is my nickname. So I got involved, and I had no idea how much I was going to be dragged into keeping this group going, because it hasn't been an easy path. It looked easy at first. It looked like it was going to be something that the city of Hamilton could take on as a project, but city of Hamilton had too many other projects to consider it, although it took we went some distance down that road, and essentially the lighthouse, does anybody not know where it is? It's on the beach strip, and it hasn't moved, and it isn't going to move. There's a lighthouse, and there's the keeper's cottage, which is beside it. My great-great-grandfather had a farm in Millgrove, and he lived part-time there, but while he was tending the light, he lived in the little house that's been moved once, but basically in the same place where it was originally located. It's 160 years old. The historical significance of it to the Port of Hamilton is profound. Lighthouses have a deep significance in terms of being a beacon for the entrance to a harbor, and this one is no exception. It's truly an icon of the beach strip, and I think it could be, once it's restored, it could be a focal point for visitors, along with some of the other attractions along the beach. So the federally owned lighthouses across Canada, both coastal and inland waters and the lakes, are in the process of being transferred to municipal or nonprofit groups by the federal government. And this is fisheries and oceans predominantly. In our case, in the case of the Beach Canal Lighthouse, the lighthouse and the keeper's cottage are currently owned by DFO, whereas the land that they are on is owned by Public Works. That has been a problem for us to get those two organizations to come together and agree to transfer the property. Most of these lighthouses are in poor. Tomorrow I go up to Collingwood to give a presentation on our canal lighthouse up there to the Nottawasaga Lighthouse Group. They got a lightning strike that hit it and knocked half the stones off one side of it. It was a serious impact. They're in the same position as we are, except it looks like right now we're farther along with respect to getting support than they are. Not from the local people, but from government and other agencies. Most of these facilities need extensive repairs. Demolition by neglect is what happens when you just don't do anything. Now, Lighthouse is pretty robust, but they're not forever. And the feds will transfer the assets to a group they think will do the job of maintaining it. And the reason why we weren't successful up until just a couple of years ago is because they didn't think our little Beach Canal Lighthouse Group would be able to manage the continued operation of or develop the site for visits and maintain the structures and restore them. So the long-term vision of the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group is to become another link of attractions along the Burlington to Hamilton Beach Strip. There's the beach trail there, or walking trail, bike trail, the Brant Museum, the Keeper's Cottage and the Lighthouse, Fisherman's Pier, Lakeland Pool, Confederation Park, and the Steam Museum. So it's an area of renovation. It's an area that Councillor Chad Collins has certainly supported. And the project involves the following three phases. First of all, restoration of the lighthouse and the Keeper's Cottage, building an interpretive center, and the Marine Museum. That's where it gets interesting. I was looking for a speaker for our group and asked my CEO to approach the CEO of Hamilton Port Authority, Ian Hamilton, to be a speaker. And that one thing led to another, and pretty soon Ian said, look, we are interested in establishing a marine museum in Hamilton. The assets from the Toronto Marine Museum and the Kingston Marine Museum could be acquired, and we could build a marine museum on that site. So why don't we come together on this project? And I thought, this is a fantastic idea. Our interpretive center, which we would need to tell the story of the museum and to accommodate school kids and visitors, that could be integrated with the Marine Museum. And it would share costs, and it would be a great concept, and that's the way it's going. So we reapplied on behalf of the Hamilton Port Authority, with them being the acquiring agency for the facilities, and Beach Canal Lighthouse Group being the people who would operate it and manage it. Public Works agreed to it, and Chancellor Chad Collins has been generously offered to support us in the very early stages by giving us $25,000 to assess the current condition. The last time it was looked at was 15 years ago by Goldsmith Borgle, the Toronto architects. So that's going ahead. There's more money from the Beach Canal Fund from Chad Collins as well. And the group that is currently engaged in the executive of the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group, they're five professionals and several others who've stayed with the organization right from the beginning. Chris Borgel, the architect who did the survey, has come back into the picture. Ian Kerr Wilson is interested in being involved from the city of Hamilton. And so we've now received, and we thought we would never see this, we wondered whether we would ever see this happen, confirmation that Fisheries and Oceans is going ahead with the transfer and access to the cottage initially. And then after a few months, the probability is, we expect this sequence of events to happen, that we would then get access to start on the restoration of the tower. So the Future Fund application is basically to conduct initial restoration of the buildings. If you look at the Borgel report back 15 years ago, it was a $4 million project to restore the lighthouse and the keeper's cottage. Well, that number may be in question. Certainly, if we can combine the Marine Museum with the building that the interpretive center that we imagined, that would certainly reduce the total cost. The Fisheries and Oceans people have told us that there's about $250,000 available from their fund for this lighthouse once we finally make the transfer. There's people, I don't know how many people in the Hamilton area who have an interest in the port who would contribute to it, but I've had one significant port property owner and a business person to say to me, we're prepared to put $200,000 into the project. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities for contribution from people who appreciate the value of the port of the city of Hamilton. How was that for timing?
I think you did great. Thank you very much.
I didn't read it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions? Fred?
Well, firstly, let me thank you for your dogged determination. It's been 15 years and you haven't let it go, and God bless you for that, because it is a piece of our history. It's as significant as Dundurn Castle or the pumping station at the wastewater treatment facility. I mean, these are historical pieces that is worth, in my view, preserving. So thank you for taking it on. I know it's not been an easy journey, and jurisdictional issues have been the biggest challenge, actually. I think once we have overcome that, I think we have, the wherewithal in the broader community that understands and appreciates that this is well worth preserving for historical purposes and open to access. So give me a snapshot picture, Sandy, of what you foresee a renovated lighthouse and lightkeeper's house being in terms of an attraction. So people are coming through on their bikes, and there's a lot of people that traveled that corridor. They're stopping in Burlington and taking in the beach and maybe stopping at the pumping station at the sewage treatment plant, the historical pumping station. What do you foresee in terms of access and accessibility, and what might they see when they get there?
Well, you're singing my song. There's going to be parking there. There will be the lighthouse restored, which you will be able to go into and climb up to the top. Not everyone, but if you can climb stairs, you'll be able to go up there. The interpretive center will be accessible for anyone. I can imagine busloads of school kids coming there. I'm involved with the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum, and we bring busloads of kids up there. We bring them from the inner city, and I mean, there is nothing more satisfying to see these kids come in there and be entertained for several hours, have a free lunch. We had one kid come up there, and he said, he was talking to another one, he said, my God, we had a hamburger. Normally, we only get a hamburger for Christmas. And if we can do something like that brings the kids from the community in to see the history of the port, how the port happened, why it happened, how important the lighthouse was to bring people into the port, I think we tell a very powerful story. So we'll have the keeper's cottage restored as it was. Likely that will be accessible with a ramp. there will be the interpretive center or the museum or a combined building where we can have classroom-type sessions and talk about the history and have artifacts in there. So that's basically how I see it. And then there's the attraction of the canal, the ships going through the canal. I mean, it's an amazing location. It's really perfect. And the other thing is, it'll be available year-round. So many of the lighthouses in Canada that have been restored or being restored, you can only get to them in the summer, whereas ours will be available year-round.
It's also a popular hawk watching location, actually, because apparently there's hawks that actually nest up in the lift bridge station. So there's lots of people there all the time. I see them there all the time, watching the hawks kind of migrate and come in and out. I personally, I think this is a brilliant concept. I'm glad to hear that the Port Authority is becoming a partner in this, as they should. The history of navigation in our city, that would be nothing but a sandspit if there wasn't a canal there. And, the whole port and the ability of our port to be, part of our economic development drive, and now the part of the recreational drive in terms of the waterfront, is a really, really good story to tell. And I think you can tell it from that very, very, I think, historic location. So thank you again for hanging in there, Sandy. I think I asked you to do it, you did it, you stuck with it, and there now are a lot of partners I know that are waiting to participate. So I really thank you for all that effort.
My thanks to you. It's going to be there longer than any of us.
Yeah.
And I've said it's going to last longer than the bridge, too. Thanks very much. Any other
Yes,
questions?
thank you very much. Oh, there's a list here.
There's a list.
The
Okay.
chair will look after it for you, don't worry. Sandy, thank you very much. And, I've spoken to the Port Authority about this over the years, and we have a Burlington-Hamilton Liaison Committee, and it's been on our agenda and talked about, so I'm delighted that this is finally coming together. So my question, Chair, through you to Sandy, with the feds agreeing to turn it over to you folks, what is the timing on that? And are there any special conditions attached to it? Perhaps you could just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, it's phased. It's in about another, a week ago, it was 2 weeks out. We were going to get a formal confirmation about the gaining access to the keeper's cottage. And then we've been told informally, they're not going to do half of it, not do the other part. But we will have, it's probably a matter of months before we will be able to gain access to the tower. We need to, because we want to use the $25,000 from Chad that we have for assessing the current condition and seeing if there's anything that's really urgent that has to be done to fix, to stop any further deterioration. They have to get access to the tower in order to do that. So I believe that, and it's not going to the properties are not going to the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group, they're going to the HPA, the Hamilton Port Authority.
Okay.
And we will be the ones to manage the facility.
Okay.
Not the museum, but the...
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. But coming back to, part of my question was around the, is there any commitment to funding from the federal government, or is it just they want to clean wash their hands of it?
No, they have told me, and I went to Ottawa to talk to them about this. Yeah. They said there's money, we have money set aside for each one of these lighthouse transfers, and as soon as they've happened, we will make that transfer, and that's to contribute to the restoration. And I believe the number is around $250,000 in our case. It may be different for each one, but that.
Okay, all right, no, and I appreciate that. So in terms of what is committed at this point, you've got the $25,000 from Councillor Collins, which he has agreed to and has talked to the rest of the council about. What other funds do you have committed at this point?
Well, at the moment, we don't have any other committed funds other than this application. There is probably more from Councillor Collins' fund as well. Once we do the initial stage, we didn't want to go too far initially. Because he was saying, how much do you want and how much do you need? And I said, well, you know what? Let's take it step by step. Let's go with a small amount so we can do an investigation, and then we'll go from there and see what else we need.
Okay, so you really can't do anything until you get access to it right now?
Really, that's it, Jess.
Yeah, okay, no, and I appreciate that. It's a wonderful project. It certainly does speak to the legacy component, of our city. You know, my father grew up down at the beach strip, and he's 98 years old, so he remembers with fond memories what it was like growing up down there. So I thank you for your presentation, and I thank you very much for your dedication and sticking with it, because I think it truly is something outstanding that our city has that not a lot of cities do across Canada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you, and I've been a huge supporter in the purest of terms. This would be defined as a legacy project without question. I guess the challenge is going to be that by looking at the application, it appears to be operating, and primarily the future fund looks at capital. So the question I have for you is in regards to the possible other partnerships, whether we can shift columns and still be part of your process in funding something that actually meets that quintessential qualification of capital. So you just move whatever you're getting from somebody else to this particular piece on the operating side and allow us to meet, because the problem is if we open that door and that floodgate on operating, then we're going to be in a whole different ball of wax in regards to many other organizations. So I guess what I'm saying is I want to help. I'm really supportive. The question is, can we be a little more creative in how we can facilitate the dollars versus by looking at the application going primarily for operating?
I think we can do that. Yes, that's a good suggestion.
Well, Terry, just to help a bit, I mean, it's not really specifically operating. It's renovating a building.
Most of the money is
this is not to maintain it or run it.
operational,
Yeah.
as opposed to
is to get it-
restoration. Yeah.
To get it to a point in time where it's usable, as opposed to.
I'm looking at staffing, trainee stipends, supplies, additional operating cost. That's the 12,000 minimum. That doesn't sound like capital.
No, well, that isn't, but it certainly is variable according to I think we can consider that that's a flexible amount of money, and it depends on the degree of involvement of the people.
We'll have a discussion, Mr. Chair. I want to support them. I want to fund them. I just want to make sure that we don't create a slippery slope. So I'm not saying no. I might say we might have to change the conditions of the funding.
Well, certainly we're flexible.
But ensure you get funding because it's a worthwhile venture. I'm just a little concerned about opening the box.
Understand.
Thank you.
Narinder?
Thank you. Through the chair, I did have this similar question just in terms of the breakdown for the 400,000 plus request. Understanding now that majority of the funds would go towards restoring the facility.
Correct.
And that a portion of that would be operational in terms of maintenance. The other question I had was around the Hamilton Port Authority. So they would be the owner of the property essentially, correct?
Yeah, the transfer of the land is still under negotiation as how they're going to, whether it's going to be a lease or whether the land is actually going to become part of the Hamilton Port Authority property portfolio. But the federal government, they're willing to transfer the ownership of the property. It's a question of whether HPA prefer it that way or they prefer to lease it.
Great. And any conversation to date with HPA about further contributions to the restoration or operation?
No, they've already given us some money, and to what degree they've explored the museum. The museum element is somewhat undefined at the moment. It all depends on how big that's going to be, whether it's going to be including the assets of the Kingston Museum, the Toronto Museum, or any other on the lakes, and how big a project that's going to be. But there's no question about the fact that the HPA feel that this is a symbolic and key element in identifying the entrance to the port.
Absolutely. And I've been down in that area a few times with my family and really enjoyed it. And, you know, the joy of my daughter looking up at the the lighthouse and getting a sense of that at a very young age and the significance and of that area for our city and for our residents. The last question I have was, you do see this as a phased project. So phase 1 is restoration, phase 2 is development of the interpretive center, and phase 3 would be the museum.
Correct.
Your current request
Correct.
is simply for phase 1 restoration.
And I should also say that the city of Burlington looks upon this. I mean, they're not going to be directly involved, but they certainly support the idea that, because it all fits in with the beach canal development.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have one question for you, though. The Chad Collins commitment to fund the investigation, the reason that hasn't started because of the ownership? Because, I mean, to me, before we decide what we're going to do and how we're going to spend the money, it'd be an interesting thing to actually have a study on what has to be done.
We've already negotiated that with Chris Bargle, the architect. He's not only going to do the work, but he's also personally very keen on the project.
I'm just curious why that hasn't happened already. I mean, I'm just asking whether they can't start because the ownership hasn't shifted.
No, that's not the reason. It's just getting, I think it's getting the quote, the initial quote from Bargle, the architects, to start the work. It's underway.
Right. So the request to the Future Fund is $400,000, or if you can't get $400,000, $300,000. I'm just curious, where do those numbers come from? If we haven't had a study to determine what condition the property.
Well, we know what the big number is, and that's $4 million. So 400,000 is a fraction of that.
Well, we're good for the last 400,000 if you get the 3,600,000. Anyway, just I mean, so that money has not yet been specifically spent, and the study actually hasn't taken place.
No. That's about to happen within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We need a mover and a second to receive the presentation. Judy, Terry, thanks. The next item on the agenda is the Hamilton Malayali Samajan request. As I call on Johnny Thomas and Sunny Palouse. Sorry if I mispronounced the name.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I know it's a mouthful. It's Hamilton Malayali Samajam. I'm with here today our Chair, Board of Director, Johnny Thomas, Property Chair, Matt Matthews, and Board Member, Dr. Anil Varghese. Respected board members, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm going to give a little bit about our organization and a little bit about the project that we are planning to do. So firstly, who we are. Hamilton Malayali Samajam is a leading not-for-profit organization, community organization established in 1986. It serves a community in Greater Hamilton mainly. The purpose of this organization and the main mandate of this organization in order to enrich the Canadian culture by contributing and preserving South Indian culture. We organize various cultural and sports events throughout the year. Many of the council members had been in our facility and attended our functions. Councillor Terry Whitehead, Councillor Judy Partridge, Councillor Nilinder Mann. They are familiar with our organization, and we have special focus on seniors, newcomers, immigrants, children, and community at large. In 2003, to meet growing needs of the community, we have decided to purchase a school. Then later on, it converted into a community center, which is in Glanbrook. We have about 15,000 square footage of indoor space and about 6 acres of land, including a sports field. The community center is fully paid off with the help of community donations and some of the business sponsorship. The facility has renovated with 120 parking spots with the accessibility parking last year. Then our project is it's an ambitious project, and it's regarding cricket. So I just wanted to give a brief outline about the cricket. Cricket is the second most popular game in the world. It's actually have a fan base about 2.5 billion people around the world, second to soccer. And currently in Canada, it's a seventh most popular game. And then in Toronto and Hamilton itself, there is about 450 schools in GTA and Hamilton. They are playing cricket. And as the immigration demographics are changing, so as you can see, that's more South Indian people are immigrated to Hamilton and surroundings. There is an exponential growth of people playing in cricket in Hamilton. And interestingly, the City of Hamilton study, outdoor recreation facility and sports field provision plan study clearly demonstrate there is a significant shortage of cricket fields in Hamilton. So that's one of the unmet need so that we are going to address. The advantage, our plan is we already have the ground, which is actually from the school ground, but unfortunately this ground is not, at current state, it's not good for a professional cricket field. The space is uneven and it can cause injury, and it doesn't have a proper pitch. The cricket, in order to the main, it's like a baseball diamond. You need a concrete pitch and with an artificial turf. So that also we don't have. The space is already have, if you look at it, the space, these are some of the pictures. We already have washrooms, outside accessible washroom for ladies and gents. So we don't need to build any accessible washroom. And the cricket, it's a day-long game, so we need a covered porch for scoring, and people need to take rest. So we are having that fully covered scoring pavilion, which is actually donated by one of our community member that cost $60,000. So that was a donation from community. And there is a fully covered barbecue area, and then we have ample parking, like enough parking space. And I just want to give a brief idea about how experienced our community group is in administering this kind of projects. So we are actually, on an volunteer basis, we are managing the city's bingo event for last 18 years, which constitute about 20 to 30% of our operating income. And we have received about 6 New Horizons for Seniors project, which is worth of $125,000, which is successfully completed. We have completed 4 enabling accessibility projects, which worth of $320,000. So then we have, over a period of time, for the capital grants and renovations, we received from corporate sponsorship and private donation more than $200,000. So who will benefit from this project? It's clear that the people are actually playing cricket and leagues, and there is so many clubs, they don't have enough space. So it's very clear. So the cricket clubs and schools in Greater Hamilton will benefit. And cricket tournament, we actually organize one cricket event tournament every year. And then more people are asking for this facility in order to rent. We cannot rent now because of the lack of facility, and the cricket leagues can use this facility. So the booking can be done either through city partnership, or we have the website, and we have the other avenues that we can arrange through that. And several cricket clubs and leagues have already expressed their interest in renting the facility once it is up and running. So if you look at the return of investment, this is a long-term investment for City of Hamilton, and it's best suited as a legacy project because it's a growing sports, and cricket, you can engage new immigrants, new community, especially South Indians there, and this can go into the public at large too, so they will appreciate the cricket. So it's best suited as a legacy project as per the future fund grant criteria. And this will add one more professional cricket field in the city's inventory. So the community members definitely is going to get benefit from this sports. And as I said, this is an ideal partnership between City of Hamilton and Hamilton Malayali Samajam. So the city, if you can provide funding through the infrastructure support, and we will be responsible for ongoing management and maintenance and in future. As the interest of time, I'm not going into details of the financial aspect of this project. That definitely that I can answer any questions regarding that in the question session. So I just wanted to give a brief outline about how the organization works. So we have board of directors, which is elected. We have a 3-year term. Then a property management committee, again elected members, 3-year term. They are responsible for all the property management, facility management. Board of directors are responsible for overall strategic direction. Then executive committee, headed by president, they have 1-year term. They are responsible for day-to-day operation of the organization. Just quickly, financial, how our organization, the income, I'm not going into details about our operating and expenses, mainly bingo, even corporate sponsorship, then property taxes and the other expenses that. And then we are very fortunate and very happy to say that several of leaders in the community and officials, they have actually supported, and they have actually given support letters, which is included in our package. Honorable David Sweet, MP, he came in our facility and then attended several functions. And Council Brenda Johnson was their last cricket event, and first-hand experience with our facility and the program. And Honorable Donna Skelly, Minister Philomena Tassi. And then Hamilton District Cricket League and Hamilton Cricket Club also gave us the letter, and they are interested in renting the facility once the project is done. And then in summary, the City of Hamilton can add one more professional cricket field with minimal investment. The second one is this facility will be open for public, any cricket club or anybody wanted to rent, this will be open for them. And we, Hamilton Malayali Samajam, is responsible for ongoing management and maintenance. So I think I stick into time. There is only 15 seconds left. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a number of questions. Terry Whitehead first.
Thank you. And I had the privilege of attending a barbecue there with over close to 600 attendees. So it really is a vibrant organization and a very exciting organization, very diverse even from a religious point of view. It all wasn't one religion. So it was really very exciting, and to see what you've done with the building since you've acquired it to even make it more inviting for these types of activities. One of the things you identified, and I know the outdoor study a number of years ago identified with the diversity of our community growing at a significant rate, which is a good thing. It's a great thing. We have lagged significantly behind in providing appropriate cultural sport fields to meet that growing need in our community. You were aware of that because you presented that in your presentation, that there's a acute shortfall of cricket fields.
That's right. So that's in, I think, in page 135 to 136. It clearly says in that report we don't have enough cricket facilities, and we get calls. And then in our community too, so we have to, most of our cricket clubs has to travel all the way to either Burlington or Oakville or Toronto to do practice, not only do the tournament, to do the practice. So
the request that you're asking for is, I think it was $358,000, and the minimum request was $281,000.
That's correct, through Chair.
So can I help me understand how you would cover, if it was 281, how would you cover that differential, if you could?
Yes, the minimum required funding that need in order to realize this project is $281,000. We have in our community, we actually contacted few people, and then they are ready to sponsor through their expertise and their money too. So we will be going to community members and the cricket clubs in order to solicit funds, and then we are confident that we can get up to that $77,000. So that will be $381 in order to realize the project.
I appreciate that. And you also indicated, because there's always concern that when you fund these kinds of things, it's really localized just for that community. But I think you really stressed in your presentation
Yes.
that other than the allocated time you need for your organization, the balance would be available to the broader community through whether it's a city booking system or whether it's through your own, and that would be a partnership you would work out. But the reality is you are welcoming the balance of this community to participate in this cricket field.
Absolutely, absolutely, through Chair. If you look at it like the overall, our activity which attract so many mainstream people, and then this facility will be available, and there are, in this facility there was a soccer, it's actually conducted by one of the soccer clubs also, we actually rented out, and there is a Montessori school that's running, and then so many other activities which is open for all.
I appreciate that. And I think what really is, I'm going to throw my council hat on, what I actually appreciate is the fact that we add a cricket field into our inventory where we have a shortage, but the taxpayers aren't picking up the cost of the ongoing operating and maintenance of that field, because you're going to do it. Is that correct?
That's 100% true, Chair. That's correct. We will be responsible for the ongoing operating and maintenance, like grass cutting, field maintenance, all that. We will be responsible. The entire the operating of our community center. Now we are actually responsible. We make that income through rental, event. Income. So we have a source of income for operating expenses to meet operating.
I appreciate that, because this is just straight capital, and you will be doing operating maintenance, and you're providing a field, and the taxpayers won't have to pick any 1 cent up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony, sorry. John, I canceled you. Anthony.
Oh, no. Through you, Mr. Chair. My concern is, and you actually addressed it, that your plan is eventually to go to artificial turf. So is there a plan? Is there a timeline of when you want to go to turf? Is it in addition to this grass field and those types of things? Because as we've seen with other city entities, the move is away from grass because of climate, the usage, those types of things. So what's the plan in terms of that?
Through Mr. Chair, there is two things in the field. One is the overall ground, and the artificial turf that I'm in the project, and then I'm talking about the pitch. The pitch it's a smaller portion of the entire field. So I don't know exact dimension, but that's a smaller portion that will have a concrete base, and on the concrete base there will be a small artificial trough. So then in the winter, they can actually roll that out, and so it's a low maintenance cost. So it's a small portion. So that's how they do the professional cricket pitch.
Judy?
Actually, I think John was before me.
Well, he didn't. It doesn't work on my machine here. He's now a third. Oh, I touch him. So what happens if I touch him?
We can stay on. We can stay on. Yeah. So you can go with John. Okay. All right, but don't touch me.
Okay, we're ready? Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. I found it incredibly educational. Just a couple quick questions. As Councillor Whitehead indicated that if this project goes ahead, then it's an excellent example of the private partnership that the city has with community groups. And again, you should be congratulated for that. The other question, maybe for staff, is if this cricket pitch becomes a reality, and will that address the shortage of cricket fields within the city? recognizing the study was done in 2011, and I don't know what has transpired since then.
Through the chair, in terms of our inventory for cricket pitches, we have currently no fully regulation size cricket pitches. We do have a few makeshift cricket pitches at the current time. We are currently planning, and shovel will be underway momentarily in terms of our development at Confederation Park for a full-size regulation cricket pitch. So currently at this moment, we do not have a fully regulation size cricket pitch. If this were to be supported, that would move that inventory to 2.
Okay. Just another procedural question, I guess, is you indicate that you're going to rent the pitch out. Obviously, it's a great way to generate revenue. Would the club do that, or how would the city become involved in renting a private facility?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. We are open to whatever the way it actually works best for the community members, community members, or we have a website system that currently we have a process of renting out facility. We could use that, or we are welcoming cities process, so we are ready to partnership anyway, that whatever works best.
Great, thanks, all I have. Appreciate.
You're back, Judy. I'm back. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for coming in and for your, it's great presentation, and for your board of directors as well. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming in and answering some questions. I've been most impressed with not only the vibrancy of certainly your members and your community, but your organization just has the ability to administer, to fund, to get so many people involved and create these sustainable, very sustainable projects. The question I've asked before, and I'm going to present it to you, is about the legacy aspect of it. I know what my version of the legacy aspect is, but I'd like to hear yours and your organizations and you know, the discussion that perhaps took place at the board level around what type of legacy project this actually will mean to the city of Hamilton, if you would please.
Thank you, Councillor Judy Patrick, and through Chair. Though to our point of view, through our we think this one is perfectly fit for as a legacy project for few reasons. One is our organization's mandate in order to bring the culture or bring the sports to Canadian and introduce to the Canadian mainstream. So it's a two-way partnership, and it's perfectly fit as a legacy because we don't have many cricket, the professional courts in Hamilton. So this will be one of the kind, and then it will be properly recognized as Future Fund Project Cricket in our community and the community at large too. So that will be perfectly fit for its legacy, and it's a long term, very long term. Once the field is done, that's mostly it's forever. So then people will be more and more attracted, and then we can engage our community through sports into the mainstream.
And I thank you for that answer. I think another part of the legacy that the role that your organization can play is that you would be the official first location, unless Confederation Park gets there first, but you would be the first one there, and I think that's really quite an accomplishment. I just want to mention, Chair, that I know that some of your members do come from the Flamborough area and from many different locations around. It certainly isn't just the local area that you have, but I can guarantee you I have been getting phone calls as well about having the pitch built in Flamborough. So I think definitely there's possibilities for tournaments there, and I can only see that the membership would increase. So again, I thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Evelyn?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd just like to congratulate you and your group for doing the amazing work you've been doing across Hamilton for many years. As a just child of cricket fan, my mother is a strong cricket fan. We have to stay up late at night to watch the series whenever it's on. And my nephew being named Venkataragavan is because of the Indian cricketer who was a very champion in cricket. So our family is very cricket oriented. Not the younger one as much, but the older generation being the West Indies against Pakistan or India, wherever. So just want to congratulate you and keeping that legacy alive. It's a British, came from the British colonizers that gave us that sports, and we've loved it over the centuries. My question around this, it relates to the management of this field. Given you'd be receiving funding from the city, taxpayers from all backgrounds, how open are you to having input from the various communities who participate in cricket, such as the Caribbean, Australia, the UK? Because my excitement about this project was because I know it's not, you're the organizer, but I know it's a sports for many, many people from various parts of the world. And I just want to make sure that the accessibility for those people becomes an integral part of the management, not simply for one cultural community, which I know you've mentioned before through Councillor White's question. I wanted to reiterate whether or not there's an openness to having a voice from those cricket player communities to shape the management from a strategic end. And so that's my question.
Thank you for your question through Chair. That's a wonderful question. Like the culture of our organization and the way that we do the activities. So if you look at this project itself, we had several consultations with the cricket clubs and who play cricket, and they're actively involved. We have actually collected a lot of feedbacks and then what they want, how it actually runs, and then we have collected that information. That's how that we actually made the project. That's one thing. And then in addition to that, I just wanted to highlight a few of the other partnership events that we do. The one of the example will be this year is Gandhi's 150th the anniversary. So there is about 15 different organizations in Hamilton. It's actually combining, and then we are doing one event at Hamilton Malayali Samajam in order to foster that relationship with the other communities. And all the other project, New Horizons for Seniors project, Enabling Accessibility project, we received, we asked for partnership letters with the other organization too, and they rent our facility in order to do the programs there, Bengali community and different other communities, they do programs. Thank you.
Tara?
Hello, and again, thank you so much for the presentation. I do not know too much about cricket, but it seems like it's a very important sport, and we do need more pitches in the area. One of my, and I don't know if this is a question particularly to you or something that we'll have to address later, but I do feel like we have to understand more about the partnership between your organization and how it will be dealt with through the city, if it's your organization or the city that actually owns the pitch, because it's on private property. And I would like to know how you will try to promote the sport and to include, people all throughout the city in it, because I think it is a little bit far away from a bus stop in Glanbrook. So how will you be able to include, people in this area as well? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question through Ms. Chair. The cricket now, if you look at the inventory, like the cricket, they play throughout the summertime, and now they have to travel all the way to Burlington or Oakville in order to play this. So mostly the people will travel, and then it's not that far, like it's about 15-20 minutes from if you travel from downtown, or like most of the people who lives in that area mountain area, Hamilton mountain area. For them, it's not that accessible, like it's not that far in order to get access. And it's a day game. It's not like a shorter game. Once they in there, like they will be leaving only in the evening. Like it's especially in the one-day match, it's actually 6-7 hours. And the partnership aspect, the facility will be there, and what they need is to access this space in order to play. So what we are thinking in our organization point, it will be just like any other facility, any other soccer field. Anybody wanted to rent this facility and use the facility, they are welcome, and they can first come, first served basis.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
Thank you for your presentation. And you've said that anybody can rent the facility. What's the cost to rent the facility?
The cost aspect we haven't actually worked out, but it will be what we are in discussion. It will be something like the normal rate that actually renting the facility, like a soccer field or any other field. So it will be like a city's rate or like comparable to that. Because we don't anticipate very high administrative, we need to cover our expenses mainly. So we are not going to employ anyone in order to, like there is no permanent employees, 0 employees in our organization. So we are not anticipating any high overhead expense. So it's basically, we have to meet the cost.
So it would be, I believe that if someone privately wants to rent the fields, it's an hourly cost
Yes.
to the city, and so it's a game that takes 6 to 8 hours.
It depends on how many hours they play.
Okay.
So like 6-7 hours, yeah.
Okay. And how many hours would be free? I understand that it's open June, July, August, September, and that your group would certainly have some commitment of time in terms of leagues and competitions, etc. How many hours do you anticipate will be free that will be available for people to rent?
Thank you, through Chair. We have only commitment 2 to 3 days in a year. That's our organization. We officially host a tournament. So that's required 2 or 3 days. The rest of the time, once it is done, then it's open. So anyone, any club can rent that. And regarding the time, it will be like a soccer, like once the court is or the field is settled, and then I would imagine like somewhere in June we will be able to open, and then late September or early October we have to close. Depends on the weather and rain and the other factors.
Thank you. I just have, so I'm sort of the guy who runs the book here in a way. So you're asking for 358,000, but you could take 281,000 because you think you can raise 77,000.
That's good.
You can raise 140,000? I mean, I'm just asking. It seems like a number that doesn't relate to anything to me.
That's the one of the number, like after all the discussions like that's came up with comfortably that we can actually do in order to, this is very ambitious project, and when we do it, we wanted to do it properly.
Sure.
And it's a long-term investment. It's not like a short-term investment. So that's why when we do it, we wanted to do it properly.
So thank you for your presentation. The only other comment I'd make, and we will be talking about all of the presentations after, I think certainly for me, if we do approve this, I need a cricket lesson.
Absolutely, absolutely, anytime.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yep. Late, but I'll let you.
It's actually not a question, it's just a quick comment to just add to the spirit. I actually never understood cricket, but I had the honor and privilege to go to Cape Town and watch the World Cricket Championships. And it is a big deal in those that part of the world.
The next time you go to Cape Town, I'm going with you. But anyway, okay. Thank you very much. No, one more. Okay.
So we're making declarations. I'll throw my 2 cents worth in. I had a couple of opportunities to go to bat at Mountain Sports Park, and it was hard.
Yeah.
But it was fun. and it's certainly a challenge. So just to follow on the question in terms of community use time. So how do we, have kind of broader community use, kids that might want to access free without rental? We asked many of the other groups here, tennis and sports. What kind of community access program might you have to inspire the younger generations to play without having a whole lot of cost?
Absolutely. So the one of the benefit with our community, there are so many people, they are talented in cricket. Like they played actually, even we have community members, they played in state level team and national team. They are willing to coach the new, young kids, and all that will be community event and free for all. So what we are talking, the rental will be the structured program anyone wanted to do, but all the other activities will be free. Whatever we offer now, it's all free. So we charge only very minimal in order to cover the cost.
Anyway, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
May I have a motion, a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Terry, Evelyn. The last presentation today is from Compass Community Health, formerly the North Hamilton Community Health Center. I'd like to call on Brent Esau and Mr. Andrew Sweetnam to present. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having us. So for more than 30 years, the North Hamilton Community Health Center has been a mainstay in Hamilton's North End. In addition to responding to the health needs of individual clients and their families, we've worked to provide innovative solutions to address overall health concerns in the community toward reaching a goal where there are absolutely no obstacles to health. Many, as you know, experience obstacles in everyday life. People like Bashir, who one of the youth we work with is, after arriving in Hamilton when he was 19 years old, was placed in grade 9 because he was unable to receive education in the refugee camps. However, at 19, he doesn't have the luxury of spending 4 years in high school and another couple of years in post-secondary earning an education because he needs to quickly develop job skills to provide for his family. Or individuals like Jane, who lives within the North End community. However, her family lives north of Toronto and spends most of her days alone in her apartment. And her engagement is really when she comes to one of our programs. Individuals like Bashir and Jane face barriers, face obstacles. Like these two, many experience obstacles that include food insecurity or housing instability, etc. And so from our inception, we have been committed to providing accessible programs, services, primary health care to these individuals and to our communities. But in April of this year, you might be wondering why we're Compass. In April of this year, we changed our name from North Hamilton Community Health Center to Compass Community Health, because as we've grown as an organization, many of the people and the clients supported by the programs and services we have no longer live in the North End. And so the word compass is a reflection of the direction we're heading in the north, south, east, and west. Points of the compass represent the wide range of populations that we serve, even as we remain connected to our community. After all, the compass does always point north. So we are still committed to our community. We're still connected to our community and committed to health, just as we always have been. That said, within our primary service area, and the area within which this program will be located, there's a higher concentration of people like Jane, who live alone as seniors. And what we know about that is seniors who are living in isolation and the stresses of living alone lead to lower health outcomes in these seniors, including fractures or institutionalization. But on the flip side, social integration and participation of older adults in society are often seen as indicators of healthy aging. It's widely accepted that social support for seniors has strong positive effects on health and well-being. Furthermore, youth in poverty and unemployment rates in our city are high. As you may or may not know, about 1 in 5 youth currently, like Bashir, live in poverty. So programs that support life skill development and provide meaningful job opportunities, employment skills, mentoring, and intergenerational community engagement have been proven to show long-term support for youth employment. In addition to all of this, this initiative will build in environmental and financial responsibility and sustainability. First, it will operate as a social enterprise to generate long-term programming for these youth and for the seniors, not just the ones who are involved currently or initially, but those for years to come as it continues to sustain itself. And as well as the fact that, as you can see up there, more than 60% of the 3.7 million tons of food waste in Ontario could be reused and could be repurposed and eaten, but instead are thrown into landfills. That's the word I'm looking for. So taking an intergenerational approach to connect isolated seniors with youth who are vulnerable, while at the same time supporting environmental sustainability, we're going to really take the Yes You Can program to the youth and to the seniors in our community. And so Andrew's going to take a few minutes to explain exactly how the program will work.
So the Yes We Can program will take the form of a 10-week program that runs bi-weekly, starting in the spring and ending in late summer. And so the program will engage community members to take part in an intergenerational social enterprise that will preserve surplus food that would otherwise be sent to landfills, thereby diverting good, usable food away from these landfills. So the initiative will connect youth and seniors to come together to plan, pick, and produce a variety of preserved food goods, including sauces, jams, and herbal teas. And the products will be marketed as locally produced, socially conscious goods. Each session of the annual program will engage 3 youth apprentices that will work in collaboration with at-risk seniors to move throughout the stages of the production of these preserved food goods. So the program will have key learning objectives that will help youth learn hands-on business and management skills. Additionally, participants will receive a mentorship opportunity from the Business Advisory Group. A weekly stipend of $50 will be provided for each youth trainee as an incentive to attend and participate in the program. The program's model of income generation will allow the project to continue year after year, thereby deepening the impact of the program, reaching more youth, engaging more seniors, and reducing residential and commercial waste. So some of the project's projected goals and objectives are to enhance community connection through the use of intergenerational programming, to improve the community's economic prosperity by providing an opportunity for youth to gain practical employment skills and to build soft skills as well throughout the program, to reduce social isolation in older adults in Hamilton, to reduce the food and organic waste, as well as to raise awareness of the local and global impact of food waste, to create a social enterprise that sustainably addresses food security, youth unemployment, and senior isolation. To have one of the aims as well is to have the program costs be covered by the revenue that's generated from the social enterprise. And so through the sale of the goods, it will help to grow community partnerships with local restaurants and shops, thereby increasing the social impact of the program. And the program evaluations that we'll be running throughout will be used to gain a better understanding of the best practices for social enterprise development in the City of Hamilton, and it will allow for replication of the program and amelioration of the program moving forward. The Yes We Can project will improve prosperity in the Hamilton community by engaging unemployed youth and directly teaching them lasting job skills and providing an opportunity to gain a positive reference upon program completion. The social enterprise portion of the project will serve to bring community together to address the global issue of food waste and to call citizens to take action to reduce food waste. Additionally, The revenues that are generated by the project will be reinvested directly back into the program to allow long-term continuation of the project, thereby creating a greater social impact and benefit to Hamiltonians. Engaging both youth and isolated seniors in the community will serve to enhance community life and to strengthen the community's social fabric. Having older adults interact in a social setting with youth and to collaborate to create a social change will create new relationships and present a unified front within the Hamilton community. Furthermore, the input of seniors in the product planning will allow the legacy of family recipes to continue on. This will ensure heirloom recipes and traditions continue to benefit future Hamiltonians for generations to come. The project will take place in North Hamilton, an area with Hamilton's third highest rate of poverty. The development of a sustainable social enterprise in this neighborhood will help educate and inspire community members to increase economic prosperity in the North End. We look forward to collaborating with the Hamilton Future Fund to engage vulnerable youth to develop long-term job skills, while at the same time integrating isolated seniors into the community. This investment from the Hamilton Future Fund will be used to build this social enterprise to ensure the impact continues beyond the duration of your commitment. Hamiltonians will be supported for years to come. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's obviously a very interesting concept to me. My question is, where else have you gone to try to get the money for this?
This would be the first time that we're applying for funding.
Right. Now, applying for funding here or anywhere else? Just curious, why? This is a unique group of, our money, it's a great idea. I'm not trying to downplay it. It's just, it's the kind of thing that I would have thought you could get from somewhere else easily. And I'm disappointed if you can't, to be fair.
It was an idea that we had just based on the needs we saw. We offer programming for older adults and for youth alike. However, there's no, presently we don't offer any intergenerational programming outside of an intergenerational kitchen. This opportunity just seemed like it would be a fit for the Hamilton Future Fund.
Megan?
Hello, thank you for your presentation. So you said that there will be 3 youth involved in this during the summer?
Correct, yeah, 3 youth will be involved in every, so it's a 10-week program offered every year, and 3 youth will be involved every year.
Every year. And it's 2 times a week or once every 2 weeks?
Once every 2 weeks.
Once every 2 weeks. And how many seniors will be participating?
We're hoping to have 5 seniors involved throughout their product planning phase.
How will you select the people who will participate?
So as I mentioned, we run programming for older adults currently. We have a program called Seniors Kitchen, and that's sort of where the idea for this project came out. A lot of these older adults they have a lot of experience with the canning and preservation. However, being isolated and living on their own, they don't have anybody to share the recipes with. So that's sort of where the seed of this idea was planted. So that's probably the pool of older adults that we would reach from for this program.
So people that are already participating in a program at Compass Health.
Yes, but this would give them an opportunity to take a leadership role rather than at the present programming, someone else leads the program and they participate. This would be a bit of a change.
Okay. Now, in the original, and you mentioned today that there would be a $50 per week honorarium for the youth, but in the original request there was a request, and there was $13,560 for staff. What is that staff?
So that would be for a program facilitator. So rather than just having the youth and the seniors on their own, it would just be having a staff person to oversee their interactions, to sort of help guide the program, as well as facilitating the mentorship sessions with the youth and with the older adults as well.
I noticed that in the original model that you provided, in year 3, the operating costs declined, though there was the same projected profit. And I wondered why the operating costs, expenses declined.
Yeah, so it's written somewhere within the application, but if the program proves to be successful and we're sort of hitting these target numbers, the health center, one of the health center staff, or well, that person that you were just talking about, the program facilitator, that salary will turn to an in-kind donation from the health center. So it will fall under regular health center programming, and so that those staffing dollars are therefore removed from the project. Okay. The operating costs just become what you see there.
So you already have a seniors kitchen program that's running, and this would be drawing seniors from that. Had you given thought to running this program during that seniors kitchen program?
We have not, mainly because the program is just targeted towards seniors, and really trying to give them, build their skills up, and to give them food to bring home. So the way that the program works is not only do they come in for a meal, they also take food home with them. And I think that would sort of detract from that program if we were to inject this in there.
And lastly, so you said that there would be an in-kind donation from the health center after year 3. What is the reason that it couldn't happen in year 1?
Part of that one is we actually see more heavy investment on the front end. Really what we're asking for here is startup costs for a social enterprise. And so because of that, there are always the initial upfront costs are higher to get that going. And so we see a higher investment at the front end to get the social enterprise off the ground.
And you'd be hiring someone specifically for this role for the summer?
Correct.
Thank you, that's all.
So Councillor Whitehead actually knocked himself off the list, so I will be gracious and let him go first, and then if you can come back to me, thank you.
There you go. Machine works.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much for the presentation. In fact, it wasn't very long ago the Future Fund dealt with neighbor to neighbor and their community kitchen, and a lot of the similarities with some of the principles and some of the concepts you put forward. So I'm hugely supportive of those type of programs. But it begs the question, because you really are coming in for capital. This is primary operating. When neighbor to neighbor came in, it was clear that they couldn't get operating. They applied for the expansion of the kitchen, the building of the kitchen. Have you applied for? My understanding, Community Foundation really focuses on these types of programs. Have you made an application with them?
We are actually in the process of putting this something for the Edith Turner in the fall. But we haven't done anything yet because that deadline is, I think, November.
Thank you.
Judy, you don't want to say anything, Judy? You do want to say something?
I keep getting knocked off the list. Thank you.
For me.
Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming in. And the previous speaker, Councillor Whitehead, did indicate the Community Foundation is the fact that you do have a youth and a senior program. It may be a very good fit for them, and hearing that you're going for the Edith Turner funding perhaps in the fall is encouraging. But have you been out to meet with Neighbor to Neighbor at all, or other organizations doing anything similar?
Yeah, I was actually there on Friday for the first time, and I sit on a committee with some of the people that work there. So definitely would be a partnership that we would try and reach out and just kind of see what work they're doing there to ameliorate what we're doing at the health center.
I'm really pleased to hear that, Chair, and I would encourage you to meet with other folks that are doing something similar. Certainly Food Share and various food banks around churches quite often have similar programs. But there is a need for it, the food safety and security, and, you know, so many times we throw food out when there's nothing wrong with it. And so I'm very encouraged to hear this program continue forward. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to share some information about potential funding, which I have received from my organization. It's the New Horizons Seniors Program. This is a perfect program that I've just received funding for a seniors intergenerational project for the Afro-Canadian Caribbean Association. So I know that this is a primary priority for them, especially engaging seniors. So the application deadline just went on the 21st, but for the future, that's just to let you know that they're really pushing that agenda forward. With Minister Tassi as the Minister of Seniors Affairs in Hamilton, she's really been supportive of the Hamilton projects.
Jerry?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, thank you very much for your presentation. You described this very much as looking for startup costs for a social enterprise. And then you talked about how the health center could assume some in-kind costs once you got to year 3. So that tells me that Compass Community Health has some experience launching social enterprises. It seems like a very deliberate, planned way. And I'm just curious to hear about the experience of the organization with starting up and running social enterprise.
Actually, not necessarily Compass specifically. I actually have a background. About 6-7 years ago, I started a social enterprise in the Niagara region, doing preserves, using some of the food waste from farmers, making preserves, and we employed homeless individuals in the Niagara region. So I do have a bit of experience in the startup, so that's where some of this came from.
Okay, thank you very much. It sounds a lot like community living Grimsby, West Lincoln as well. So I kind of wondered. Okay, so this is a new venture then for Compass Community Health. This is the first foot into trying to launch social enterprise as a way to generate revenue for the organization. Okay, thank you very much.
No other questions? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Sarah? Megan? Thank you very much. Okay, so we're 3:15. There's a number of people who said they have to leave by 3:30, so we can't accommodate everybody. But I think in order to change the order of the presentations, I have had one request to deal with the Samanjan application first. If that's okay with everybody? Now, having said that, just reminding everybody where we are in this whole process. So we had $3,228,000 available to distribute. We approved $384,000 in the first applications series of the last time we got together. If my math is correct, we have $2,844,000 left. Last year, we went through the same exercise and gave away about a third of what we had, because if we give it all away, we won't have anything to give away next year. And that's not a reason not to give it away, it's just the reality of the situation. So with that, the first one that we're gonna talk about is the cricket application. So open the floor for conversation. Terry? Oops.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's got nothing to do with my love for cricket. I'm still trying to understand it. But having said that, I remember when staff presented the background report in the city of Hamilton, and then we got the demographic numbers in regards to the shift that's taken place in our community, and it was clear that there's a huge void in cultural sport in our community. As you heard from staff, they're just implementing the first regulated cricket at Confederation Park for a population of over 520,000 people. So clearly, there's still a significant deficit. You got a great organization, proven organization, ability to raise money as they demonstrated through the presentation. Truly a legacy project, because it would be a regulatory field that facilitates new immigrants into our community as well as the ones that currently live here, and certainly will help facilitate meeting the demand. Their openness, Mr. Chair, to opening up the field to the broader community was very clear and abundantly clear. Whether they partner with the city in the context of the booking and reimbursement, or whether they do it through their website, I think the gesture and the point that they're making is this will truly be a community asset. So I didn't want to get caught in the micro details. To me, it was, by saying that, clearly was a statement that this is going to facilitate meeting the needs of the greater community. So for those reasons, I truly see this as a legacy project, and I move to support the 300 and whatever it was, 348, what was it? Okay, so just 258,000.
Moved by Terry, seconded by Judy. We have two other requests for conversation.
Thank you. I just wanted to also say that I was in support of the recommendation moving forward, what Councillor Whitehead has just proposed. I think part of the legacy of this project is one that is fundamentally inclusive. The focus on ensuring that diverse ethnic and racialized communities have access to a facility that we currently don't have in the city. The fact that there's a focus here on not only newcomer populations, multiracial populations, different cultural populations, but also the emphasis on children and youth and seniors development. I was also encouraged by the applicants speaking today about their openness in terms of working with the city in figuring out their registration and community access. I think the mayor raised a really important point in terms of free community access, especially when it comes to multi-generational development of people playing cricket moving forward in future generations. So I just wanted to say that I'm definitely in favor of this one going forward at the full requested funds.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Just wanted to reiterate what has been said before, but to identify the fact that in 2006, the Social Planning Council of Hamilton Region identified the issue in a report called Recreation Access for Children and Youth of the Hamilton Diverse Communities, Opening Doors, Expanding Opportunities. For those of us who've been working around diversity and inclusion in this community, it's a very positive move because we have been pushing for accessibility of resources for uncommon voices, I would call them, in Hamilton. So I fully support this proposal. I was impressed with the openness as well of the applicant to hear the voices of various communities to ensure that its management is intact and in fact that it's diverse in its application or management of the program. So I'm very supportive of this.
Thank you. Tara?
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to voice, I believe that we do need more cricket fields. I am still a little bit wary as to the public-private partnership, and we don't have all the details, and the devil is in the details. So I would appreciate more information before being able to make a decision on it.
Thank you, and they've demonstrated a great team and a great commitment and passion to not only the sport but to community engagement throughout this process. So I'm fully supportive of this. And just on that last point, I mean, we've had maybe to our city staff, we've had many occasions where we've utilized private facilities when we've had shortages of capacity in the city itself, and then we end up making an arrangement that kind of provides for a block of time, and then we have a prearranged kind of funding arrangement. I think that's been done on occasion. Can you kind of share some insight on that in terms of the question that Tara just asked?
Through the chair, that is correct in terms of the relationships that we have fostered with many organizations, whether it's a school board, whether it's other private organizations that step in and provide that operational support where staff cannot due to infrastructure needs or staffing. We've successfully had those agreements and partnerships with many organizations in that matter.
All right, so in this circumstance, given that maybe this pitch will be up before Confederation Park, or there's demand for both, we would be looking to, if we had community demand that we needed to fill, we'd be looking to them and saying, let's make an arrangement for us to get access to, on a rental basis from the city. So the city would rent a portion of their time for public use through kind of city resources, right?
Through the chair, that'd be correct. I think the one thing that we would have to just consult with risk management in terms of just the proper steps that we would take.
Right.
But we have had those conversations and those agreements in the past.
Thank you. So I fully support this, and it's a reasonable question to ask. How would that arrangement happen? And it's happened in the past. It will happen again, and wherever we're short in terms of the city, and then the private sector has the ability to provide, we've made arrangements to provide in a sensible, reasonable, and risk-averse way. So risk is always an issue, but that's always captured in the arrangement that's being made. So fully support this.
Okay, so I think we've heard from everybody. Before we call for the vote, we do have to have a clarification. If we vote yes, are we voting for 358,000 or 281,000? They did indicate that 281,000 would be enough. 281? So the money they say they can raise on their own, we don't care about that. Well, I don't know, but anyway, before we vote, I just want to have clarification. They said they wanted 358,000. They indicated they could raise 77,000, if I'm correct. So they asked for 358. If they couldn't get 358, 281 was enough. So just help me here. Okay, the motion's the full amount. I guess we're voting on the full amount.
So through you, Mr. Chair, do you need me to read the resolution, or is everyone clear on what?
Read it if you can, then sure.
So that the grant application from the Hamilton Malayale Samajam for the conversion of a sports field into a cricket field at 1095 Woodburn Road in the amount of $358,000 be approved.
Okay, John?
Defeated, then we can present another motion for the 281. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we vote. Motion carried by 9-5. Okay, thank you. The next item we're going to talk about is the 91st Highlanders Athletic Association. Fred?
Thank you. So another one of those projects that, in my view, has a lasting legacy. So the Mohawk Sports Park has multifaceted uses, attached to it, and we are absolutely short of a well looked after, well developed track in the city of Hamilton. As they mentioned, even McMaster doesn't really measure up to the total capacity requirement or the total assessed requirement for a fully blown track. So this is a great add-on to this facility. Now I'm guessing we're talking about the $150,000 amount. Am I correct on that? Is that the
It's 150 or 100 was there was two requests.
Right. So the 150 was kind of the full kind of portion that would allow them to do track or some other element of the facility. If I could just get a clarification. I saw gazebo, I saw
right, but it depended on other funding from other people at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And that's fair. And so I'm supportive of moving forward on this one. I think the full funding is I think an amount that once it's all built out would have a lasting value for the city of Hamilton, for many years to come. So I think the legacy piece in my mind is definitely covered. So I would, at the appropriate time, move the 150 to the Highland Athletic Association.
Not yet. At the appropriate time?
I'll wait for the appropriate.
Okay. Evelyn?
I have a process question from the previous vote. Is there a way for me to correct? I pressed the wrong button, so it's been passed, but it did pass eventually. But I spoke for it, and it looked like I pressed no. But
Oh, it passed anyway, so if you spoke for it, it's not a problem.
okay, just want to make sure that I'm supportive. It was a technical error on my fingernails or something.
So no comment here?
No.
No. Narinder? Sorry, I'm going to push again here. Okay.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a process question about how we've allocated funds in the past here. So when a project has come forward and their other funding applications are in a timeline, and they had mentioned in their presentation that they have a 2-year scope for the project. Have we ever encouraged an applicant to come back once they've secured other funding?
Absolutely.
So I think that this project absolutely has legacy, but I think that making sure that we've got all of the funds that are needed, 1/3 funding right now isn't going to make this project fly. It requires full funding in order to achieve the capital enhancements that are required to meet some of their OAD compliance, ensuring that they're able to meet all of the funds for the bleachers and whatnot. I would propose that we encourage them to come back for next year's round of funding.
Okay, the one other alternative to that is we can make our grant conditional on getting the other approvals. So, Arlene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think on that note, I'd just like to go a little further. I know they've asked for a full amount and they've asked for a separate amount, and I've closed the file on my computer because I do have to leave for a board meeting and an AGM. But I'm wondering whether it might, there's a question in my mind about whether their additional funding is contingent on a funding source from the city, like whether any of it is tied to what we give to them, and whether it might be, oh, he took my phone. Thank you, Terry. Whether it might be helpful, rather than putting it off or thinking about putting it off until another year, to give them the minimum amount that they wanted, which would let them get started. So I don't know whether it's possible to have that question answered. Staff may even know the answer. But I think it's important to know whether or not funding from us will have an impact on whether they can get funding from the other sources. Steve?
Through the chair, I wouldn't be able to profess my full knowledge of their process. However, in speaking with the group, I know that they do have a plan in terms of the phasing aspect. I know that the funds that they hope to secure will allow them to do the elements of the phase. So whether that is, as Kevin mentioned in his presentation, in terms of the seating, if that allows them to do a portion of the seating, then that, I believe that satisfies their needs in terms of that piece. To answer your question about the linkages to other funding pieces, I think it's favorable for their organization, and I can only speak from my discussions with them, to have favorable support to progress and to complete their full phasing of all their elements.
So it seems obvious to me that if they get our support, it's not going to hurt them. Having said that, it sounded to me like they needed almost all of the money, or they would just do part of something. So, I mean, I think, to me, if we make it conditional on getting whatever it is that else they need, that certainly indicates that we're not against it, but we're not committing to anything. Because to me, to commit to some part of it, and we don't know whether they're going to get the rest of it, on a $450,000 project, give them 100, I don't think does much. That's just me.
So I have one more question, and I'm not sure who it goes to. Sure. But this is my first year on the Future Fund Committee or Board. And so I'm wondering if they were to get, or anyone was to get partial funding from the Future Fund this year, would they be eligible to apply for the rest of it in a following year? Or is there some limitation about?
No, we've done that before. Not all, rarely, but we've done it. So you can come back and ask for more. Typically, one of the issues here on a regular basis is we don't want people to keep coming back who've been approved or denied. Now, that's a little bit different. That's sort of a, you could be approved for more, but I mean, to me, to keep doing these things is, we should make a decision. I mean, to me, they've made an application. They were asking for 150. If they get the other money from everybody else, I think we're in support of the application if we approve that conditional on getting all the other money that they said they were going to get.
Well, I am supportive of the application, and I would not want them to be in a position where they were impacted negatively by us putting it off for a year. I just wanted the questions answered, and I'm happy to support a full allocation, and if that can't work, then I'm happy to support a partial one. So thank you.
Tara?
Hello. Through the chair, just continuing on with that, I think that we should vote on the full amount because, as was expressed in the presentation, whatever amount they get, they can do 3 separate things, and I believe they will start with the bleachers, so that will at least cover a substantial part of what they're doing, and I don't think any of us can really hold our breath anymore for Trillium grants. Thank you.
Evelyn?
I was going to say to the chair as well, the partial piece seemed to me that it could be a standalone, as the staff indicated, that if we get part of the funding, it could still achieve the objective of increasing the numbers of seats, and it could be a phased approach. So I'm supportive of that component, and not to put it incumbent on whether or not they get further funding, because they would have achieved an objective of having increased seats if that's the only part that gets funded.
What I heard was the $100,000 doesn't get them anything. Even the partial seats are more than 100. Yeah. So I think the 100 doesn't get you seats. I think if they end up at 300 instead of 450, then they get some seats because we gave them 150. But maybe to help, I think if we did it conditionally, there's nothing to stop them from coming back next year and look, this is where we got to, but we didn't quite get there. So my suggestion is that we vote on giving them $150,000 on condition that they get all the other funding. If they don't get all the other funding, it doesn't count this year, they could come back. That's not part of it. The 100 doesn't do them any good, based on what they said. So it's $150,000 on condition that they get all the other money that they need. And if they don't get all the money, I would say that we wouldn't discourage them from coming back.
So I'm in support of the 150 because I do see this as a great legacy project. I'm not in favor of the condition. I think for an organization, a community organization especially, one that's looking after a sports field, they have a very limited season of which to capitalize on any investment that's made. And I think it's putting them in a more a difficult position. They need to have a clear answer. I think we should just vote cleanly on it, and my support is for the 150 with no conditions.
Through the chair, I'd like to vote on the 150, and I'm supportive of that. If I'm reading the application properly, they were looking for the 150. In the event the minimum amount was awarded, the 100, they were going to go to Trillium and the Government of Canada. If I heard the presentation correctly, both of those were applied for and were already denied. In both cases, they've gone back to the drawing board. One they won't know till December, the other one was spring of 2020. If we try to game our decisions to match the funding decisions of other agencies, the organizations are disadvantaged. So I would support voting on the 150, and I'm very supportive of that.
Okay. Fred?
This is the appropriate time now, Mr. Chair. Okay. I would move that we support the 150 request, full stop.
Seconder? I guess we're going to vote on giving them 150 without conditions, if I understood it correctly. So if you want to read that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the final resolution would be that the grant application from the 91st Highlanders Athletic Association for the installation of spectator bleachers and an outdoor gazebo structure at the Ray Lewis Track and Field Center, Mohawk Sports Park, in the amount of $150,000 be approved.
Okay. Carried. Okay, the next application was the Ancaster Tennis Club.
Thank you. So this to me is another opportunity for us to kind of expand the ability for this facility to have a year-round presence, and I think that has enormous value. And I recall, back in the day when we funded, or partially funded, the Rosedale bubble, it has actually served them extremely well over the last, I would say, 25, even 30 years. So it's been, in fact, today, they're keeping that up, year-round and using their other courts, multiple courts on the outside to fulfill the kind of the other demands. So they still charge for people that want to play in the bubble through the summer, but they also have other courts available beyond that. This is an opportunity, I think, to benefit not just Ancaster. I think this is much broader than Ancaster. It has membership in a kind of a broad swath of the city of Hamilton. And they've maintained and continue to advocate for a broader community use at no cost. And I think that's a very important feature of what they're proposing to do. So again, at the appropriate time, I'm more than happy to support the $205,911. We could probably round it off to 2006, I suppose, but we'll let the mathematicians work that one out. But notwithstanding, I think it has, the kind of legacy and benefits that are going to accrue. I would simply suggest, though, and I'm assuming that when that one slide came up on funding, and it said on the one side for Leasing Dome, court fees and increased membership, that court fees and increased membership may still apply to cover the balance that may or may not come from the Trillium grant. So I think that they can raise the balance of the money. They've already raised a fair bit, and a city loan, which is not unusual, which is exactly the same process I think we used for Rosedale back in the day to offer them a loan to get them up and running and happening. And today, super successful in terms of their capacity and their use year-round, which I think has enormous benefit.
Okay, thank you. Tara?
Thank you. Through the chair, in this case, perhaps we should make it conditional on them raising the other $150,000, whether it is through the Trillium grant or through their membership, because that is a vast gaping hole.
I agree with the chair. I think that's an excellent suggestion. And just so I completely understand, if they do receive funding, is it for the purchase of the dome or the leasing of the dome? Because I've heard
Purchase.
the purchasing of. Okay.
The economics don't work for the leasing. It's just so much more expensive that they're just...
Okay, that's great then, thanks.
To pick up on the mayor's point, though, they did indicate they would raise money additionally if they leased it because they needed more money. So they have two places to get the money from. They could reapply to Trillium, which I'm sure they're going to do, and they could charge more fees and whatever else to make up the difference. So I think if it worked on one, it could work on the other. Fred again.
So I'm just prepared to move a 2006 contribution to this without any conditions. I'm not offering up any conditions.
We need a seconder for that? Okay, Anthony, can we read what we're going to be voting on, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the final recommendation would be that the grant application from the Ancaster Tennis Club for the construction of a tennis dome in the amount of $206,000 be approved.
Okay. Be surprised. 7-5. I guess that's carried. Beach Canal Lighthouse. Late in the day, all right. I mean, I think it's a, go ahead. Fred. No, I mean, to me, it sounds like a great project. We don't know who owns it. We don't know who's going to own it. It should be something we're going to do. We should do it. We don't know if it's feasible because they haven't done the study yet. My reaction to this one, I think we should make an exception and come back next year. That's my suggestion. I'm not preempting Fred, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fair. It's not unreasonable. The problem is that this has always been a kind of a chicken and egg kind of process for this organization, and they've been working towards creating community partners, and they're just about there. So having the Port Authority as a partner is particularly positive. Having the government finally say that they're prepared to offload this to the Port Authority through that process is very positive. I would be more inclined to say make it conditional on a confirmation of the transfer of ownership from the federal government to the Port Authority, and then the work begins. So I think I'd want to make a commitment to the dollars, and in this case I would make it conditional on the transfer of the ownership. For those that are looking for conditions, I'm on.
I guess I'm all about conditions today, and I do agree with Mayor Eisenberger. I'm just really excited about this project and seeing the passion that this gentleman has and his group has for it. I believe in him. I think that he can make it happen, and I want to give him the money conditionally on all that other stuff.
Good stuff.
Judy? Lose you again?
There we go. Okay. You're catching on. You're catching
Slowly.
on. Yeah. No, absolutely. I am fully in support of this one, and actually I am in support of the condition. I think the difference with this one is not only is it a legacy project for our community, but it is a legacy project for a much broader community. I'm okay with the condition on it because I do believe that with the Hamilton Future funding being conditional, it will actually assist these folks with any application or any request or need from the federal government and from the Port Authority. So, I think if we step in and say, hey, we're good to invest, let's see let everybody else step up. And I think that's what this funding approval would be. Just saying to the others, okay, we're the first ones in, other than Councillor Collins, and let's see everybody else step up. Thank you.
Then that's for the 400 or the 300? Because to me, and I mean, I'm not against, I think it's a great organization, it's not my call, but they don't know what they're going to spend for how much. So to me, if you want to encourage them to do it, 400, all right? Okay. Yarrow?
I've known Sandy for a long time, and I agree with Tara. He'll get it done. It's going to take time, but he'll get it done. But the one comment, it was sort of a little bit of a flippant comment, but I didn't quite understand when he talked about this maybe costing $4 million to restore the whole thing. Does anybody have a better understanding of how this $400,000 is going to impact that $4 million?
It's certainly going to help it, but I don't think it gets very far to getting it. I think the $4 million had something to do with with the bigger plan of the other thing that they were going to build there needed at least $4 million. So that's what my reaction was. I think it's great to support it. You want to spend 400, that's okay. But 300 does just as much in terms of support because they don't know what they're spending it on. They don't have a budget. They haven't had the study yet to see if it's even feasible. So anyway.
I don't want to monopolize, but just to say that Sandy, when I first asked him to do this, and because he's a businessman, he's done well for himself, but he took this on, and he's been at it for 15 years. He's never let it go, and I have no doubt that he's going to make this work because he's determined that this is going to be a legacy piece for the city and for his grandfather, quite frankly, that was the lighthouse keeper back in the day, the weatherman. He actually delivered the weather reports from that location to the rest of the city of Hamilton at the turn of the century. So he's just passionate about this, and I think our commitment will, as Judy pointed out, I think advance the cause of getting this transfer happening. So I will move at this moment in time $400,000 with a condition that it be conditional on the transfer of the ownership.
Seconder? Rinder?
So my comment was before the movement, and that was just to express that the $25,000 conditional assessment is going to be a big indicator of what is going to come and what funds are required to get this legacy project to where it needs to go. I don't question the vision, I don't question the passion, I don't question the tenacity, I don't question what it's going to result in for our community. I think all those things are definitely within the purview of what we're aiming to fund under this board, but I also am aware of the scrutiny that we're bringing to some of the other applications in terms of, do you know how much it's going to cost you? And what are we actually funding? And so I just words of caution from me.
Okay, no other comments? So the motion that's brought forward is an approval of $400,000 on condition that the property is conveyed to the Hamilton Port Authority, I guess. Or anywhere else? Hamilton Port Authority? Yeah, yes, he did. Yeah, yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I could just read the final resolution to make sure I'm clear. It would be that the grant application from the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group for the restoration of the Hamilton Beach Strip Canal Lighthouse and Keeper's House in the amount of $400,000 be approved conditional on the transfer of ownership from the Hamilton Port Authority to the Beach Canal Lighthouse Group. No?
The Hamilton Authority, the other way. Yep.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, conditional on the transfer of ownership from the federal government to the Hamilton Port Authority.
Okay, it's carried 10-2. Thank you. So the last item that we were going to review today is the Compass Community Health, formerly North Hamilton Community Health Center. Request was for $16,800, and if that wasn't approved, it was for $12,000.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And, as the discussion that took place after the presentation, and a good presentation, by the way, I would not be able to support this. I don't feel that it fits the legacy mandate, but I certainly, and they're at the very beginning of their process of looking for funding and, in fact, still talking to other organizations in the community. So there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to continue to do the outreach and homework, if you will, that they need to do. And the fact that they're going to be meeting with the Community Foundation and tapping into the Edith Turner Fund, I think is a good place for them to be. But I don't see this as a project for the Hamilton Future Fund. Thank you.
Thanks.
So it kind of brings into question, what we're building in terms of a city. And this may be a bit of a reach, but I think an investment in our people is a capital investment in every respect when we're actually helping build lives. So it may be a bit of a reach for the Future Fund, but I know that Community Foundation has actually changed its approach in terms of how it's investing in our community, from not just using their capital, but using their not just using their interest, but using their capital for impact investing. Impact investing being how are we going to actively impact the lives of individuals in our community? And this program does that in very positive ways. And you know what? For a very minimal amount of money. So I'm supportive of this program. I think it's a fit when we think about it from a kind of a building people kind of perspective. So I'd be inclined to be supportive of it, and I'll wait to see what everyone else has to say.
Thank you. Megan?
I'm not supportive of funding it. It's a very small subset of people that will be impacted within the actual program. It's actually seniors that are currently in a program that they have, so it would be 3 youth that they've identified, and then hiring a staff person. They identified that Compass Health will fund the position in year 3, which indicates that they probably could in year 1, and they have other places that they could request the money from. So I think that they should probably seek it elsewhere. It's a great program, but I think they should probably seek the money elsewhere. Also, North Hamilton has come to request funding from most of the times that we've opened up in recent memory, whether it be for furniture or et cetera, et cetera. So this is just another kick at the can.
Thank you.
This is my first year on this board, and I know at our last meeting we talked about operational versus capital funding, and I think some folks said that we did approve, or operational dollars were approved in the past for startups, given some certain conditions, and I see this as a startup of social enterprise and building some skills in communities that really need some support. So at first I wasn't really thinking too much about supporting this project, but I think I've turned around, and I see this as a bit of a startup that would benefit from, it's not a lot of money, and you know, give them a bit of a leg up in that community that needs that kind of support. So I'm going to be supportive of the full amount.
Render?
I think similar to Megan's comments, for me, the project by all means is important work in terms of food access, food security, food justice work in our community, and definitely hitting the right demographic of participants of the program. But I think it was raised by Evelyn had raised a very great suggestion, so whether or not it's the Hamilton Community Foundation or New Horizons grants, through the Ward 3 Councillor's Office, I've put forward letters of support for New Horizon grants, and had almost every single one of those projects supported. I know that is the right type of program funder for this kind of initiative, and I'd be happy to support the applicants in another way, pursuing those kinds of streams. But unfortunately, I think if we open the door here on this project, then it does, for me, raise questions about some of the things that we denied funding for just last meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair, that was exactly what I was about to say, Councillor Nan. I know we ought to be looking at each of these applications as individual applications onto themselves, but it feels to me if we were to approve this one today, it would be really incongruent with some of the decisions we made a month ago. This could be a really good initiative. It is still a really small initiative. Like, we're looking at 3 youth benefiting and maybe some legacy in terms of an organization learning about social enterprise. But I couldn't support it for funding by this fund.
Okay, thank you. So I think on this one, based on what I'm hearing, I think the motion, we need a seconder for Judy's motion, I guess. Do you have a motion, Judy? I think what I'm hearing is to deny it with some in whatever. I think we should bring it to a vote to deny it. See what happens.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I would need
Sorry, before you do that, just for the group that's sitting here, I mean, I think one of the things that this group has tried to do over the years is actually make suggestions to people when they come in and make an application. It's not just to deny them, but to give them good ideas of what else they could be doing. So I think we've done that during this meeting at the beginning. So no one's suggesting there's anything wrong with the thought. It's just it's the wrong place to ask for the money if it passes as no. Go ahead. Okay, seconder for that? John, it was Judy and John.
So the motion would be that the grant application from the Compass Community Health, formerly North Hamilton Community Health Center, be denied.
Okay, the motion was carried 9-3. And again, no indication it's a bad idea. It's just it's the wrong place to ask for the money. Okay, thank you. So I think we're just about done here. Are there any notices of motion? No notices of motion? None? Are there any items of general information or other business that anyone would like to raise? Oh, sorry.
Through the chair, last meeting we had a great conversation about reviewing our process, and I was just wondering where that landed.
I think we're going to try to schedule a meeting for the fall.
Okay.
to do that.
Great.
We may do it as a subcommittee, we may do it as, we'll send out a notification and get some indication of whether we should meet as a group or whether we should meet individually and then come as a group, so something like that. Okay. Same question, all right. That's where I was, yeah. May I please have a mover and a seconder for a motion to adjourn? I think that's carried. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for sure.